In English grammar, a noun is a word that is the name of something. A person, an animal, a thing, a state, an event, an idea, or a feeling. For example, the little boy wants a cat for his birthday. In this sentence, we have three nouns: boy, which refers to a person; cat, which refers to an animal; and birthday, which refers to an event. Let's practice with some other sentences. The queen-sized bed has green sheets. In this sentence, we have two nouns, bed and sheets. Bed is a singular noun, which means there is only one bed. Sheets is plural because it has an S at the end of the word. This means there is more than one sheet. Be careful. The word queen is not a noun in this sentence. It is compounded with sized to create an adjective. Queen-sized describes the size of the bed. Let's move on to another sentence. The blue backpack is full of books. There are also two nouns in this sentence. Backpack is a singular noun, and books is a plural noun, as you can see by the S at the end of the word. Good job! Now, it's important to note that there are different types of nouns. First, we have proper nouns. A proper noun is a word that refers to a specific person, place, or object. For example, John is the name of a person, London is the name of a specific place, and the Statue of Liberty refers to an object or thing. Notice how the J in John, L in London, and S and L of Statue of Liberty are capitalized. This is because we always capitalize the first letter of proper nouns. Common nouns are words that refer to a non-specific person, place, or object. For example, a woman is a non-specific person. Country is the name of a non-specific place. Table is the name for a non-specific object or thing. Notice how the W in woman, C in country, and T in table are not capitalized. This is because common nouns are not capitalized unless they are the first word in a sentence. Now, let's practice. How many nouns can you find in the following sentences? Julia is the name of the child. Great! In this sentence, there are three nouns. Julia is a proper noun, as it refers to a specific person, whilst name and child are common nouns. Let's try another sentence. Elizabeth is the queen of a country called England. In this sentence, there are 4 nouns. Elizabeth and England are 2 proper nouns. They refer to a specific person and place. Queen and country are 2 common nouns. Congratulations! Now you know all about proper and common nouns. Our next category of nouns are countable and uncountable. Countable nouns, as you can guess, can be counted, and they have singular and plural forms. A countable noun becomes plural by adding s at the end of the word. For example, 1 chair is singular. 2 chairs, 3 chairs, 4 chairs, and so on are plural. Now, it's your turn. Can you make the plural forms of these countable nouns? Apple, pen, door, lion. The plural form of apple is apples. The plural form of pen is pens. The plural form of door is doors. The plural form of lion is lions. Make sure to always pronounce the S at the end of plural nouns. Some countable nouns become plurals in other ways. By this, I mean you don't add an S. They are called irregular plural nouns. Here are some examples. The plural of man is men. The plural of child is children. The plural of country is countries. The plural of mouse is mice. Great work! Now, if countable nouns can be counted, then uncountable nouns cannot. They only have a singular form. You never add an S to them. For example, sugar, dirt, information, milk. Articles. There are 3 articles in the English language: a, un, the, and they must always be used with singular countable nouns. For example, a chair, an elephant, a man, the queen. Let's see some articles within a sentence. The woman is sleeping in a hotel. There are 2 nouns in this sentence: woman and hotel. Therefore, we need 2 articles: the woman, a hotel. We do not need an article for proper nouns of people or places. For example, I like France. There is no article before France. I'm spending time with Mary. There is no article before Mary. The only exceptions are for certain countries that usually end with an S. For example, the United States of America, the Maldives, the Galapagos. The indefinite articles are a, un. They refer to non-specific nouns. We use a in front of a consonant letter and un in front of a vowel. For example, a chair. Chair begins with a C, which is a consonant. Therefore, we use the article a. An elephant. Elephant starts with an E. Therefore, we use the article un. The vowels in English are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Often, we use an indefinite article first, then follow it by the definite article the. For example, I saw a cat. The cat was black and white. In the first sentence, I saw a cat, we mention the cat for the first time. The listener might not know what cat I am referring to. In the second sentence, we mention cat for the second time. Therefore, we can use the definite article the. Let's have a closer look. The definite article the is used to refer to a specific person or thing. For example, I like looking at the moon. Moon is specific. There is only one. Can we go to the coffee shop I like? We don't mean any coffee shop. We mean a specific one. We can use the definite article the with uncountable nouns. For example, can you pass the sugar, please? Sugar is uncountable. Therefore, we use the definite article the. The information you gave me is wrong. Information is an uncountable common noun. Therefore, we use the definite article the. Quantifiers are words used to express an amount or quantity. Some quantifiers can only be used with countable nouns. Many, few, a few, fewer, several. For example, there are many eggs in the basket. Eggs is a countable noun, so we can use the quantifier many. There are a few children in that class. This sentence means there are not many children in the class. Fewer tourists traveled this year. Some other quantifiers can only be used with uncountable nouns. Much, little, a bit of. For example, I don't put much sugar in my coffee. Sugar is an uncountable noun. Therefore, we can use much. There's very little water left in the bottle. Some quantifiers may be used with both countable and uncountable nouns. All, some, any, lots of, plenty of, enough. For example, we have enough milk to make pancakes. There are lots of pencils in his backpack. Pronouns. A pronoun is a word that replaces a noun or noun phrase that has already been mentioned in a text or conversation. For example, in the sentence, Alex loves going to the cinema. She watches all the new movies. The pronoun she replaces the name Alex so that these sentences are not too repetitive. The cat and the dog are friends. They play together all the time. The pronoun they replaces or refers to the cat and the dog. There are many types of pronouns, but today we will be learning about personal and possessive pronouns as well as possessive adjectives. Now let's get the pronouns party started by getting personal. There are two types of personal pronouns: subject and object. The subject of a phrase is the person or thing doing the main action, whereas the object is having something done to it. For example, my sister loves books. There are two nouns in this sentence: sister and books. The main action is the verb love. My sister is the noun doing the action. Sister loves. So she is the subject. Whereas love is happening to the book. Therefore, book is the object. Now let's take a look at the subject and object pronouns. The subject pronouns are I, you, he, she, it, we, you, they. The object pronouns are me, you, him, her, it, us, you, them. You may notice that the pronoun you appears twice in the same category. That's because the first you is singular, whereas the second you is plural and refers to two or more people. These personal pronouns stand in for nouns and noun phrases and generally refer back to them in a conversation or text. For example, the book is about a love story. It is very interesting. The pronoun it refers to the book. It replaces the word book to not sound repetitive. I can't carry the box. It is too heavy. In the first sentence, the speaker of the sentence is the subject, referred to with the personal pronoun I. In the second sentence, the box becomes the subject and is referred to with the personal pronoun it. The clothes in the closet are arranged very neatly. Laura put them away this morning. In the first sentence, the noun clothes is the subject of the sentence. But in the second sentence, Laura becomes the subject and clothes becomes the object and is therefore replaced with the object personal pronoun them. Our next step is learning about possessive pronouns and adjectives. It can be confusing because these words are sometimes referred to as possessive pronouns and absolute pronouns, whilst in other grammar books, we call them possessive pronouns and adjectives. This is just to explain that depending on the teacher or the grammar book or the website, you might see different names for the grammar we are about to learn next. But for the sake of simplicity in this lesson, we will be learning about possessive pronouns and possessive adjectives. Now, possessive adjectives are used to talk about ownership. The possessive adjectives are my, your, his, her, its, our, your, their. Possessive adjectives are used before a noun to show who or what owns it. For example, this is my jacket. The dog is looking for its master. Possessive pronouns. Just like possessive adjectives, possessive pronouns indicate who owns a thing. The possessive pronouns are mine, yours, his, hers, its, ours, yours, theirs. Possessive pronouns are used instead of a noun to show who or what owns something. For example, the hat belongs to Karen. It's hers. The possessive pronoun hers replaces the word hat and indicate who owns it. It's Karen. She gave him her phone. Now it's his. Now let's begin today's lesson with reflexive pronouns. The reflexive pronouns are myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, ourselves, yourselves, themselves, and they refer to the person or animal that is the subject of a verb. For example, Jane likes herself in red. The reflexive pronoun herself refers back to Jane. Reflexive pronouns can be used in a sentence in different ways. It can be used as the object of a verb. For example, Joe blames himself for the mistake. Who does Joe blame? Himself. He is both the subject and the object. Reflexive pronouns can also be used as the object of a preposition. Look at yourself. At is a preposition. Yourself is the reflexive pronoun. Reflexive pronouns can also be used as the indirect object of a verb. She helped herself to a sandwich. Finally, the last use of a reflexive pronoun is to emphasize a noun or personal noun. Alex herself baked this amazing pie. There are only two types of reciprocal pronouns, and they are each other, one another. We use reciprocal pronouns when two or more people do the same thing together. For example, Jessica and Tom sent each other letters. This sentence means that Jessica sent Tom letters and Tom sent Jessica letters. They both did it together. We sent one another flowers. We could indicate 2, 3, 4, or more people. This means that each person sent the others flowers. Everyone sent and everyone received the flowers. Be careful. Make sure not to confuse reciprocal pronouns with possessive pronouns, because they can really change the meaning of a sentence. For example, Ted and Lola talk to each other regularly. This sentence means that Ted talks to Lola and Lola talks to Ted. But in the sentence, Ted and Lola talk to themselves regularly. This sentence means that Ted talks to Ted and Lola talks to Lola. Demonstrative pronouns. A demonstrative pronoun refers to a specific thing to indicate whether it is close or far in space and/or time. There are 4 demonstrative pronouns: this, that, these, those. To indicate one or more things near in distance or time, we use the pronouns this and these. To indicate one or more things that are far in distance or time, we use the pronouns that and those. All 4 of these demonstrative pronouns can be used before a noun or instead of a noun. For example, that was the last time I heard that song. Relative pronouns. We use relative pronouns to introduce relative clauses, which is simply a sentence used to clarify or add information about who or what we are talking about. The relative pronouns are who, whom, whose, which, that. We use the relative pronouns who and whom for people, whose to indicate ownership, which for things, and the word that for both people and things. In American English, it is more common to use that for things. People rarely use which. Whereas in British English, people still use both which and that. For example, Marie Curie is the woman who discovered radium. The relative clause, who discovered radium, gives more information about the woman, Marie Curie. I'm reading Wild, which is my favorite book, for the 3rd time. The relative clause, which is my favorite book, gives more information about the book Wild. Notice how the relative clause is in the middle of the sentence and is therefore placed between 2 commas. Let's move on to interrogative pronouns. The interrogative pronouns are who, what, where, whom, which, whose. Notice how they are very similar to relative pronouns. We just use them differently, as we use interrogative pronouns to ask questions, and therefore use them at the beginning of a question. These interrogative pronouns refer to a person, place, time, information, or thing that we don't know. For example, who is that girl you were with? Who indicates a person that we don't know. Which shoes should I wear tonight? Which refers to a thing that we don't know. Be careful not to confuse whose and whose. Notice that they have the same pronunciation but are spelt differently. Whose, WHO''S, means who is. It's a contraction. We will be learning more about contractions in Chapter 3 of this course. Whose, WHOSE, is a possessive pronoun. Finally, it's time for one last category of pronouns. These are indefinite pronouns. They are used to refer to non-specific people or things. To speak about all non-specific people or things, we use everyone, everybody, everywhere, everything. To speak about a non-positive person, place, or thing in a positive sentence, we use someone, somebody, somewhere, something. To speak about a non-specific person, place, or thing in a negative sentence, we use anyone, anybody, anywhere, anything. To speak about a zero quantity of non-specific people, places, or things, we use no one, nobody, nowhere, or nothing. For example, I didn't see anyone famous in New York. We are talking about a non-specific person in a negative sentence construction, as indicated by did not or didn't. Therefore, we use anyone. Now it's time to move on to adjectives. An adjective is a word used to describe nouns, such as people, objects, events, substances, and ideas. Using adjectives are a great way to elevate your spoken and written English and help you to more clearly and vividly express your thoughts and feelings. Let's compare a sentence with adjectives and one with none. I found a bag today. This is a very basic sentence structure. What does the bag look like? We don't know. I found a beautiful red silk bag today. Not only do we have a description of the bag, we can imagine what it looks like in our head. We also have a sense of how the speaker feels about the bag. Beautiful indicates that they are very happy with the bag they found. See how the adjectives gives you a better idea of what is happening in the sentence? Some adjectives have only one form. For example, tall, fat, cute, simple, long. While some adjectives can become their opposite meaning or antonym by adding a prefix to them. If you remember our introduction to this course, you will know that a prefix is a combination of letters used at the beginning. If you remember the introduction to this course, you will know that a prefix is a combination of letters we can add to a word to change its meaning. For example, legal, illegal. Legal is something you can do. Illegal is something you should not do. Sensitive, insensitive. Honest, dishonest. Famous, infamous. All these words are adjectives, but they mean different things with a prefix in front of them. The prefixes il, in, di, and ir are common prefixes. So this is how you add a prefix to an adjective to form a new word. Now we can also form adjectives by adding a suffix to a noun. A suffix is a combination of letters we add at the end of a word to make a new one. For example, hair is a noun. Hairy is an adjective. Beauty is a noun. Beautiful is an adjective. Luck, lucky. Magic, magical. Another way to form adjectives is by adding a suffix to a verb. For example, attract, attractive. Enjoy, enjoyable. Hate, hateful. Create, creative. Now, adjectives can be used in 3 different ways in a sentence. First, between an article and a noun. For example, I'm eating a juicy strawberry. A is an article and strawberry is a noun. Juicy is the adjective describing the strawberry. The kind man lent me his jumper. We can use an adjective after a linking verb. The classroom is empty. Ben is handsome. In both these sentences, is the linking verb, and empty and handsome are the adjectives. We will learn more about linking verbs later on in the course. We can also use an adjective after a noun or an indefinite pronoun. For example, is there anything special I should buy from the shop? Anything is an indefinite pronoun, and special is the adjective. I spoke to the person concerned. Now, where it gets tricky is when we want to use more than one adjective before a noun. Adjectives fall into 2 categories: cumulative and coordinate. Cumulative adjectives are used when the adjectives are from different categories. For example, size, age, or quantity, and must be used in a specific order. Cumulative adjectives are recognizable because if you change their order, the sentence no longer makes sense or holds the same meaning. For example, the waiter brought a tall baby chair. The waiter brought a baby tall chair. As you can see, the first sentence contains cumulative adjectives. The word baby must be next to the noun it modifies, chair, to make sense. With the cumulative adjectives reversed, the meaning of the phrase completely changes. Now here is a comprehensive list on how to order cumulative adjectives. Generally, it is best to use 2 or 3 adjectives at most with a single noun in order to not confuse or overwhelm the sentence. So this is the order in which we use cumulative adjectives. First, quantity. For example, 1, 2, 6, entire. Next, opinion. Nice, friendly, annoying, charming. These adjectives indicate how we feel about something or someone. Size or measurement. Big, small, tall, tiny, large. Then, by age. Old, young, mature, elderly. Next, by shape. Round, triangular, bent. Color. Rose, gold, faded, bright. Proper adjectives like origin, nationality, and religion. For example, Christian, German, indigenous. Next, by material, wooden, cotton, silk. And finally, by purpose, makeup brush, dining room. For example, I have 2 tall, pink makeup brushes. Or, yesterday I met 5 friendly German men. See how I followed the adjectives from 1 down to 9? Now, let's move on to coordinate adjectives. In contrast to cumulative adjectives, coordinates individually modify a noun and are usually separated by a comma. A general rule to help you recognize them is if 2 or more adjectives are from a same category, then they are coordinate and you use a comma. For example, the gigantic, impressive tree loomed over the park. In this sentence, the adjectives gigantic and impressive both refer to the size and stature of the tree. Coordinate adjectives can be used in any order without changing the meaning of a sentence. For example, she was a smart, beautiful woman. She was a beautiful, smart woman. She was a beautiful and smart woman. Both these adjectives, beautiful and smart, describe how the speaker feels about the woman. They belong to the same category of adjectives and therefore can be used in any order. Knowing the difference between coordinate and cumulative adjectives can be very tricky because native speakers usually just know what sounds good without ever considering the logic of it. But following these general rules will help you improve as you develop your English instincts. Now, time to move on to comparatives and superlatives. Adjectives are used when you want to compare things. Adjectives have 3 degrees: positive, comparative, and superlative. The positive form is what we have learned in the previous lesson. It simply describes one person or thing. She is smart. A comparative compares one person, animal, or object to another. We use it to compare 2 nouns only. She is smarter than her brother. We are comparing a girl and her brother, 2 people. The superlative compares 3 or more people, animals, or objects to one another. For example, she is the smartest in the family. We are comparing a girl with all her family, whether that may be 3, 4, 5, or more people. But she is the smartest. Now, how we form the comparatives and superlatives depend on the number of syllables in an adjective. Generally speaking, for adjectives with only 1 or 2 syllables, we add the suffix er and use the word than to form the comparative. To form the superlative, we add the suffix est. For example, sweet, sweeter, sweetest. Pink, pinker, pinkest. The cat is bigger than the dog. This is the comparative. We are comparing one cat with one dog. This cat is the biggest. This sentence uses a superlative. It is comparing a cat with other animals. Now, for adjectives with more than 2 syllables and certain ones with 2, we use the words more and than to create the comparative and the most to form the superlative. For example, beautiful has 3 syllables, beautiful. We form the comparative and superlative like this: more beautiful than, the most beautiful. Another example, pleasant, more pleasant than, the most pleasant. This sofa is more comfortable than the chair. My sister's sofa is the most comfortable one though. Now, for certain adjectives with only 1 or 2 syllables, there are some specific rules to remember. Let's take a look at this chart. For adjectives with 1 syllable ending in E, we form the comparative by adding the letter R and the superlative by adding the letters ST. For example, cute, safe, nice. Cuter, safer, nicer. Cutest, safest, nicest. With adjectives with 2 syllables ending in Y, we form the comparative by changing the Y to I and adding ER. And we form the superlative by changing the Y to I and adding EST. For example, happy, funny, silly. Happier, funnier, sillier. Happiest, funniest, silliest. And finally, if an adjective has 1 syllable and ends in 1 vowel and 1 consonant, we form the comparative by doubling the consonant and adding ER, and form the superlative by doubling the consonant and adding EST. For example, big and hot. In big, I is a vowel, G is a consonant. In hot, O is a vowel, T is a consonant. So we change them to bigger, hotter, biggest, hottest, with 2 G's and 2 T's. Finally, here are a few exceptions to these rules: good, better, best; bad, worse, worst; many, more, most; much, more, most. Now, it's important to avoid some very common mistakes when forming the comparative and the superlative. These mistakes are made by mixing up their forms. For example, instead of saying easier than, many English learners might say more easier than or more easy. Now, what happens when we want to compare 2 equal attributes? By attributes, I mean a word that describes a noun that says what it looks like. We use the pattern as plus adjective plus as. For example, Tom is as tall as his brother. This means that Tom and his brother are the same size. Their attribute tall is the same. Now, to compare 2 attributes that are not equal differently to using a comparative as we have seen so far, we can use not plus as plus adjective plus as, or less plus adjective plus than. For example, Mount Everest is taller than Mont Blanc. Mont Blanc is not as tall as Mount Everest. Mont Blanc is less tall than Mount Everest. All 3 sentences have the same meaning. That Mount Everest is tall. It's taller than Mont Blanc. Now, how do we compare 2 equal quantities? So we must use adjectives indicating quantity, which are many, much, few, and little. We use many and few for countable nouns, and much and little for uncountable nouns. We follow the pattern as plus adjective indicating quantity plus noun plus as. For example, they have as many books as I do. That means they, the other people, have the same number of books as the speaker. Notice the form as plus many, which is an adjective indicating quantity, books, which is a noun, plus as. Sarah drinks as much coffee as her sister does. Coffee is an uncountable noun, so we use the adjective indicating quantity, much. We have as little information as you do. Now, to compare two unequal quantities, we use the adjectives more, fewer, and less. Fewer is used with countable nouns, less with uncountable nouns, and more we use with both. We use the construction adjective indicating quantity plus noun plus than. For example, they have more children than their neighbors. That means that they, the people, have more children. More is an adjective indicating quantity. Children is a noun, and we use than. Elsa has fewer crayons than her best friend. The teacher has less patience with Jim than the other students. Now let's move on to our topic for today, adverbs. While an adjective is a word used to describe nouns, an adverb is a word used to describe or modify verbs, adjectives, and prepositions. Adverbs can tell you when, where, or how an action took place. For example, he shouted angrily. The adverb angrily indicates the manner in which the action shouted was done. He arrived late to the party. The adverb late indicates the timing of the action, which is arrived. I stayed there when I came back to the USA. The adverb there indicates the place in which the action happened, which is stayed. Some adverbs are placed in a sentence to emphasize or intensify adjectives or adverbs. For example, that was an incredibly moving performance. Moving is an adjective. By adding the adverb incredibly, we are emphasizing how wonderful the performance was. You went to bed rather early for a Friday night. Early is an adverb. We can use two adverbs next to each other to emphasize the second one. This flower is remarkably red. Red is an adjective, and the adverb remarkably emphasizes how colorful by red is. Now, adverbs can be used in 3 different ways in a sentence. It can be used at the beginning of a phrase. For example, finally, we found the toy we were looking for. We can use an adverb in the middle of a phrase, but before a verb. A magician never reveals his secret. Reveals is a verb, and never is the adverb. Finally, we can also use adverbs at the end of a sentence or after a verb or clause. She cried desperately. The adverb desperately indicates the manner in which the action cried was done. He called for help loudly. Again, the adverb loudly indicates the manner in which the call for help was done. Here are some categories of adverbs categorized into 7 groups: manner, time, place, degree, certainty, opinion, number, interrogative. Some examples of adverbs of manner are elegantly, quietly, slowly, well. Some examples of adverbs of time are before, since, eventually, usually, now. Some adverbs of place are everywhere, nearby, here, there. Examples of adverbs of degree are rather, almost, quite, very, enough. As a side note, quite is an adverb commonly used by British English speakers and is less commonly used by Americans or other nationalities. Some examples of adverbs of certainty are definitely, probably, certainly. Adverbs of opinion are clearly, personally, naturally. Some adverbs indicating number are once, twice, and interrogative adverbs are where, when, and how. Now let's take a closer look at these 7 categories of adverbs. Adverbs of manner tell you the way an action is performed. They answer the question, how? Many adverbs of manner are formed by adding the suffix ly to adjectives, but there are some exceptions. For example, he purposefully dropped the expensive bowl. Purposeful is an adjective, and we have transformed it into an adverb by adding ly. Purposefully describes the way the action is done. Another example, they're trying hard to impress the teacher. Hard is an adverb. It does not have ly. It's irregular. Adverbs of time tell you when, how long, or how often an action has occurred. For example, dinner will be ready shortly. I have lived in France since 2010. Adverbs of place answer the question of where an action happens. They cannot be used at the beginning of a sentence. For example, I like to do yoga outside in the summer. We cannot say, outside, I like to do yoga in the summer. The adverb outside cannot be at the beginning of a sentence. Hank looked around the office for his phone. The adverb around describes where Hank is looking. Two very common adverbs of place are here and there. They give a location relative to the speaker. With verbs of movement, here means towards or with the speaker, whereas there means away and not with the speaker. For example, this house is cozy. I really like it here. The adverb here indicates the house that the speaker is in. Now, in the second example, I used to live in Japan. I want to go back there. The adverb there indicates that the speaker is not in Japan now. Here and there can be placed at the beginning of a sentence for emphasis. For example, there it is. Here we go. Adverbs of place that end in where refer to non-specific locations or directions. For example, I hope to go somewhere hot for my next holiday. This sentence refers to any place that is hot, not a specific place. That cat is everywhere. This sentence means that the cat is in many places, but doesn't indicate any specific ones. Adverbs of degree answer the question how much or to what extent, and can increase or reduce the strength of the word they describe. For example, he was incredibly loud. This sentence indicates that he is very, very, very loud. But the sentence, he was a little loud. The adverb little indicates that he is loud, but not too much. The degree of loudness changes depending on the adverb. When adverbs of degree modify a verb, it must be placed before the verb. For example, the children absolutely loved the puppet show. The adverb absolutely describes the action loved and is therefore in front of the verb. Adverbs of degree can also be used before another adverb for extra emphasis. For example, the old man walked incredibly slowly. Incredibly and slowly are both adverbs, and incredibly adds more information, emphasizes the slowness of the old man. Some adverbs of degree can have specific meanings. For example, the adverb of degree to can mean also when placed at the end of the phrase it modifies. Can I come to the mall too? To can also mean excessively when used before an adjective or another adverb. This tea is too hot. This means that the tea is not comfortable to drink. The heat is excessive. The adverb of degree very is also used to describe an excessive behavior, but its usage is very different to. Very expresses a fact, whilst to suggests there is a problem. For example, it's very cold outside. This sentence indicates a fact, that the cold is extreme. Now in the sentence, it's too cold outside, I can't go out. To indicates there is a problem for the speaker. Adverbs of certainty express how certain a subject feels about an action or event. Adverbs of certainty are used before the main verb unless the main verb is to be, in which case it's placed after. For example, he definitely won't come tonight. Definitely is placed before the verb, will not. In the second sentence, he is probably at a bar. Is a form of the verb to be. Therefore, the adverb probably is placed after. If the frame contains a helping verb, which is something we will learn more about in a future lesson, the adverb of certainty is placed between the helping verb and the main verb. For example, he has probably left it at home. Has is a helping verb, and left is the main verb. Therefore, we place the adverb probably between the two. Adverbs of certainty can also be placed at the beginning of a sentence for emphasis. For example, undoubtedly, Rosa Parks was at the forefront of the civil rights movement. Some adverbs can be used to indicate the speaker's viewpoint or opinion about an action, or make a comment about the action, without modifying the action itself. These adverbs are commonly placed at the beginning of a sentence or before the main verb. For example, clearly you're doing this all wrong. Clearly indicates the frustration of the speaker about how the action is being done. It does not modify the way the action is happening. I would personally rather you didn't come. Personally indicates the feeling of the speaker and does not modify the noun rather. Finally, our last category of adverbs are interrogative adverbs, which are placed at the beginning of a question and before a verb. Where is my book? What is the problem? We know that where and what are adverbs because they come before a verb. In this case, the verb to be. Now, let's look at how to form comparatives and superlatives with adverbs. Adverbs are used to indicate comparison in the same way as adjectives, by using more and than and the most to form the comparative and superlative forms, with all adverbs that end in ly, no matter how many syllables there are. For example, easily, more easily than, the most easily, or dangerously, more dangerously than, the most dangerously. For example, I take this job more seriously than my friend. I probably take it the most seriously of everyone on our team. More seriously than is a comparative adverb. The most seriously is a superlative adverb. Now, with short adverbs that do not end in ly, the comparative and superlative forms are very similar to adjectives. For example, hard, harder, hardest, fast, faster, fastest, late, later, latest. Now there are a few exceptions to these rules with adverbs that have irregular comparative and superlative forms. They are badly, worse, worst, far, farther or further, farthest or furthest. Both versions are correct and mean the same thing. Little, less, least. Well, better, best. I ran harder than you. Lena ran the hardest though. Harder than is a comparative, and the hardest is a superlative. I performed well on the exam, but I think you did better than me. Well is an adverb in its simple form. Better than indicates a comparison. A preposition is a word or a combination of words used to show the relationship between a noun or pronoun in the sentence to another word in the same sentence. A preposition must always be followed by a noun or pronoun. It cannot be followed by a verb. For example, the box is under the bed. The preposition under indicates the location of the box compared to the bed. We were in the middle of a storm. The preposition middle of indicates the location of the speaker in regards to the storm. Now, there are 5 categories of prepositions: simple, double, compound, participle, and phrase prepositions. In this lesson, we will be exploring simple, double, and compound prepositions and their uses. So let's get started. Simple prepositions are words like in, on, off, over, at. For example, the house is in Italy. Double prepositions are 2 simple prepositions used together, as for example, into, upon, out of. For example, pour the cream into the bowl. Compound prepositions regroup 2 or more words, usually a simple preposition and another word like across from, in addition to, from beneath. These groups or combinations of words are considered a preposition. For example, my husband sits across from me at the dinner table. These prepositions are used to form a phrase that indicates where or when something is in relation to something else, to give directions, or to introduce an object. Their usage can be further categorized into subcategories of prepositions of position, movement, time, and purpose. Let's begin with some prepositions of position or place. They are used to describe where something is located in relation to something else, or where an action happens. Here are some examples. Above. The blue dot is above the box. We use above when 2 objects are not touching. On. The blue dot is on the box. We use on when 2 objects are touching. Under. The blue dot is under the box. We use under when one object is covered by another. Underneath is also a preposition with the same meaning, but just a little more formal. Below. The blue dot is below the box. We use below when one object is in a lower position than the other. It is not touching the other object. Beneath has the same meaning as below. It is also just more formal. Behind. The blue dot is behind the box. We use behind when the subject is hidden by an object. In front of. The blue dot is in front of the box. We use in front of when the object is hidden by the subject. Next to. The blue dot is next to the box. Next to means beside. Between. The blue dot is between the two boxes. We use between when the subject is in the middle of two or more other objects. Near, close to, by. The blue dot is near the box. These three prepositions indicate a small distance between the subject and the object. We only use to with close, close to, in or inside. The blue dot is inside the box. In and inside mean the same thing. Outside. The blue dot is outside the box. The prepositions of place, in, on, at, can be the trickiest to use. In is usually used with larger or enclosed areas such as cities, countries, and tunnels. For example, I'm in Rome. Or, Josh was sitting in a cafe this morning. We use the preposition at for smaller spaces and points on a journey or destinations. For example, they arrived at the supermarket. Let's meet at the cafe. On. While we use in for cars, we use on to refer to public or commercial means of transportation. For example, the service on the plane was very good. My wife stayed on the bus until the last stop. These are general guidelines to using these prepositions. There are no specific rules and just need to be practiced. Now, prepositions of movement or direction describe how, where, or in what way something moves. The most basic preposition of direction is to, which implies movement in the direction of a goal. For example, we drove from Los Angeles to San Francisco. This means we started in Los Angeles and moved in the direction of San Francisco. Here are some more examples of prepositions of direction. Into. Into refers to something ending up inside something else. The cat jumped into the box. At the end of the action, the cat is inside the box. At. At is used to indicate direction. The dog jumped at my face. Along. Along is a movement in a straight line or on an edge. I walked along the road to my house. Around. Around is used for a movement in a circular direction. I ran around the track. Towards. We use towards when something is moving closer to something else. For example, the squirrel ran towards the tree. This means the squirrel is closer and closer to the tree. Now, prepositions of time describe when or for how long an event or action takes or will take place. The most common prepositions of time are equally in, on, at. We generally use on for days and dates. My graduation is on Monday. We use at for a specific time. Let's meet at 4 p.m. We use in to indicate a period of time. Let's work on our project in the evening. I like walking in the spring. Here are some more examples of prepositions of time. For indicates the duration of time. I've been living in Spain for 5 years. During indicates events happening at the same time. We shouldn't check our phones during dinner. The two events happening are checking phones and having dinner. Until is used for a continuous event that will finish at a specific point in the future. I'm staying at a hotel until Thursday. Finally, after is used for an action following a specific time or event. I'm meeting my friends after work. The action meeting is happening after the event work. Next, we have prepositions of purpose, which describe why something happened or will happen. Here are some examples. For, she made the cake for her brother. Because of, I arrived late because of work. From, I know from experience not to upset them. As you know, prepositions are always followed by a noun or pronoun. Now, what we haven't explored yet is that there are specific combinations of prepositions with nouns, adjectives, or verbs. And these combinations can sometimes change the meaning of the original verb, or noun, or adjective. Let's look at some examples. The reason for canceling is private. Reason is a noun. For is a preposition. His comment led to an argument. Led is a verb. To is a preposition. I am amazed by your talent. Amazed is an adjective. By is a preposition. Many nouns, adjectives, and verbs are used with specific prepositions. But what can be tricky is that there aren't any set rules on how to use them. And the only way to know how is by practicing as much as possible. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to learn some common uses for certain prepositions and practice as many of them as possible. First, let's begin by taking a look at some common uses of prepositions within different combinations. By. The preposition by expresses cause and manner. For example, I paid by credit card. I broke the mirror by mistake. For indicates an objective. Let's go for a run. Would you like to come to my house for dinner? In. The preposition in expresses a conditional state of being. That means a state of being that is true now. I'm in love. Call me in case you need anything. On. The preposition on indicates a state of being or intention. For example, the house is on fire. I'm away on business next week. Of. Of indicates the cause or relationship between subjects. She is at the heart of all my problems. I love this picture of my family. The preposition of shows the relationship between picture and family, or between the heart and the problems. 2. To indicates who receives an action or indicates a destination. Did she invite you to her wedding? She was nice to me. With. With describes relationships or connections. My relationship with my sister is not very good right now. Have you been in contact with Lola recently? Between. The preposition between expresses the relationship between two or more things. There is no difference between those dresses. There is no contact between my family and I. Now it's time to look at common pairings of adjectives and prepositions. Sometimes combining certain prepositions with an adjective can change its meaning. For example, I'm afraid of my sister. I'm afraid for my sister. The first sentence means that my sister scares me. I am scared. I am afraid of my sister. She is scary. The second sentence, afraid for, means I am worried about my sister. I am afraid for her. I hope she is okay. Now remember, these are only certain examples of prepositions that can be used with these adjectives. At. We use at to talk about skills and abilities with adjectives like good, bad, fantastic, horrible. For example, he's terrible at playing the piano. This means he is not very good at playing the piano. My sister is really great at speaking Spanish. About. We use the preposition about to explain what is the cause of a feeling. We use it with adjectives like happy, sad, angry, nervous. For example, I'm worried about my friend. I'm so happy to hear about your new job. We also use for to explain the cause of a feeling. I'm so angry for Lisa. She didn't deserve to be spoken to like that. If we had used the preposition at, that would mean that I, the speaker, am mad at Lisa. Lisa made me angry. But in this sentence, with the preposition for, this means that something else has made me angry. I am worried about Lisa. Of. We use the preposition of to express feelings for someone or something. I'm afraid of mice. I'm so proud of you. The preposition to is often used to show the connection between people and things. Joe is married to Lisa. I'm addicted to my phone. To can also be used to describe someone's behavior towards someone else. He was really nice to me at the party. I try to be polite to everyone. Prepositions and verbs. This one is very important because there are many of these combinations that completely change the meaning of a verb. These combinations are called phrasal verbs. For example, look, look up, look after, look forward to. The verb look is a verb indicating what your eyes are gazing at. Look up combines a verb and a preposition and means to move your gaze in a specific direction. Look after combines a verb and an adverb and means to care for someone. Look forward to combines a verb, an adverb, and a preposition and means to be excited for something happening in the near or far future. A conjunction is a word that connects similar words or groups of words like phrases, clauses, and sentences. Let's begin by looking at the differences between a phrase, a clause, and a sentence. A clause is a group of words with a subject-verb group. For example, I got on the plane. I is the subject. got is the verb. There is a subject and a verb, therefore this is a clause. There can be two types of clauses in a sentence: an independent clause and a dependent clause. An independent clause is the main part of a sentence and can function by itself. Like our previous example, I got on the plane. This sentence is correct. It has meaning. We understand it. A dependent clause, also called a subordinate clause, has a subject-verb group like the main clause, but cannot function by itself. See is a verb and family is a subject. Yet the clause "to see my family" does not make sense by itself. You must always combine a dependent clause with an independent one to understand the meaning. I got on the plane to see my family. Now the clause makes sense. A phrase is a group of words without a verb, therefore without a subject-verb group. For example, I got on the plane is an independent clause, and heading to California is the phrase. A sentence is a complete set of words that consists of a main clause and sometimes a phrase or dependent clause. For example, I got on a plane is a sentence. I got on a plane heading to California is a sentence. And I got on a plane heading to California to see my family is also a sentence. Well done. Now, where do conjunctions come in? Well, conjunctions serve to connect each part of a sentence together. There are three types of conjunctions: coordinating, subordinating, and correlative conjunctions. Coordinating conjunctions, also called coordinators, are used to link two or more main or independent clauses or nouns. The 7 coordinators are and, but, or, nor, for, yet, so. For example, he plays the piano and the guitar. The coordinator and connects piano and guitar, which are 2 nouns. He arrived on time, but I was late. The coordinator, but, combines 2 main clauses. He arrived on time, and I was late. It is favored to use a comma before a coordinator. It is not recommended to use more than 2 main clauses in a sentence, as that might be too long and may be confusing. Subordinating conjunctions, also called subordinators, are used to connect a dependent clause to an independent one. Some common subordinators are after, although, because, as, though, once, before, if, that, unless, until, whether, while, etc. For example, he went hiking even though he had hurt his ankle. He went hiking is an independent clause. Even though he had hurt his ankle is a dependent clause. Notice how there isn't a comma in this example. We only use a comma to separate an independent and dependent clause when the subordinator is at the beginning of a sentence. For example, she ate another cookie although she had already eaten 3. Although is used after the main clause, so there is no comma. In the second example, although she had already eaten 3 cookies, she ate another one. The subordinator although is at the beginning of the sentence. Therefore, we must use a comma between the main clause and the dependent clause. Now, a correlative conjunction is a pair of words that work together to connect 2 grammatically equal parts of a sentence. Some examples of correlative conjunctions are either or, neither nor, both and, whether or. For example, I don't know whether I'll spend the holidays in Spain or Portugal. Spain and Portugal are 2 proper nouns, and therefore are 2 grammatically equal parts of this sentence. Neither father nor son wants to go fishing. Father and son are 2 nouns, and are therefore grammatically equal in this sentence. Certain conjunctions are used in very specific ways, so let's take a look. The conjunction and connects similar ideas. For example, Sam and Josie won't go to the party. This sentence means that Sam and Josie are doing the same thing. They are not going to the party. Both and is used for emphasis. Both my cousins and my sisters are excited for the concert. The conjunctions but, though, so, while, whereas link words, phrases, or clauses that have contrasting or opposite ideas or meanings. For example, While I went for a run, my husband prepared dinner. The conjunction while indicates that I and my husband are doing different things. I love cooking, but my brother hates it. The conjunction but indicates that my brother and I don't like the same thing, cooking. Or is used to present a choice or alternative. Would you like some juice or lemonade? You can choose between the juice and the lemonade. The conjunctions so and therefore indicate a cause and effect. For example, he was very tired the day of the test, so he didn't expect to do so well. The cause is being tired. The effect is not doing well on the test. The conjunctions either or and neither nor present a choice between two alternatives. However, the alternatives must belong to the same category of word. For example, two nouns or two verbs. We use either or for positive choices and neither nor for negative choices. For example, on my next holiday, I want to go either to Vietnam or Nepal. This sentence indicates that I want to go to Vietnam and Nepal, and I will choose one. I want neither coffee nor tea. This sentence means I don't want coffee, I don't want tea. Interjections are a part of speech used to express sudden, surprise, or emotion. They are grammatically independent from the rest of the sentence and are usually at the beginning of a sentence or they stand alone. Interjections are often accompanied by an exclamation mark to emphasize its meaning. Here are some examples. Ouch! Notice there is an exclamation mark to emphasize the feeling of pain. Ah, what a surprise! Once again, we have an exclamation mark. We separate the interjection a with a comma because it is grammatically independent from the rest of the sentence. Eh? Can you repeat that, please? In this sentence, the interjection is used to express confusion. Hey, why are you in my house? In this sentence, the interjection hey is used to express shock or maybe fear. Hi there. Oh, I didn't know about that. No, wait, sorry, I'm gonna go back. I should have said something. Hi there. The interjection hi is used to express excitement or happiness at seeing someone, and the exclamation mark emphasizes this feeling. Oh, I didn't know about that. The interjection "oh" can have different meanings or feelings depending on the context of the sentence. It could be surprise, or it could be sadness. Oh, I didn't know about that. It can be shock. Oh, I didn't know about that. Well, what should we do now? The interjection "well" serves to emphasize the lack of knowledge of the speaker. Great! I'm so happy for you. The interjection "great" serves to intensify the feeling of happiness and excitement. Notice how there are 2 exclamation marks in this sentence to really show the feeling of the speaker. Great! I'm so happy for you. Bloody hell! This interjection is typically very British. Americans don't generally use this interjection, but you might hear it in many popular English movies or TV series. Verbs are action words that indicate an action, occurrence, or state of being. They express what is happening and when. They can also express possibilities and conditions. All sentences require a verb. And when I say all, I mean all. You cannot have a sentence without a verb. There are 3 types of verbs: action, linking, and auxiliary. Action verbs are words that indicate an action or possession. For example, I saw Joe at the supermarket yesterday. This indicates an action. I have 2 black dresses. The action verb have indicates possession. Now we have 2 types of action verbs: transitive and intransitive. Transitive verbs always have a noun that receives the action of the verb, called the direct object. For example, Molly buys shoes. Shoes is the object receiving the verb's action. Therefore, the word buys is a transitive verb. I eat vegetables every day. Vegetables is the object, and eat is the transitive action verb. Now, transitive verbs sometimes have indirect objects, which indicate to whom or for whom the action is done. For example, Paul gave Lola a gift. The transitive verb is gave. The direct object is a gift. Paul gave a gift. The indirect object is Lola. To whom did he give the gift? To Lola. Great. Now, intransitive action verbs never have a direct or indirect object. It can be followed by an adverb, but not by an object to receive the action. I ran across the street. The verb is ran. The phrase across the street modifies the verb, but no object receives the action. Let's practice. Are the verbs underlined in these sentences transitive or intransitive? I consulted a doctor at the hospital. The verb consulted is transitive because the object is a doctor. A doctor receives the action. I waited at the store. Waited is an intransitive verb in this sentence. The store is not an object that receives the action to wait. It is simply the location. I received your letter yesterday. Received is a transitive verb. What did I receive? Your letter. Letter is the direct object of this verb. The loud noise woke me. Woke is a transitive verb in this sentence. What did the loud noise wake? It woke me. Me is the direct object. The wind was blowing loudly last night. The verb blowing is intransitive. All right, great practice. Now it's time to move on with linking verbs. A linking verb is used to describe how the subject of a sentence is feeling. For example, Joey feels excited. Excited indicates the emotions that Joey has. The verb feel describes this emotion. The key is to understand that action verbs indicate what something is doing or what someone is doing, while a linking verb indicates how they feel. To recognize a linking verb, you can try to replace the main verb with the verb to be in all its forms, present, past, and future, and see if the sentence still makes sense. If it does, then it's a linking verb. For example, Riley grows tired after a long day of work. Riley is tired after a long day of work. These two sentences have the same meaning. Therefore, grows is a linking verb. The girl seemed sad. The girl was sad. Once again, you can replace the verb seemed with the verb to be, was, and the sentence still makes sense and keeps its meaning. Therefore, seemed is a linking verb, and it expresses the emotions felt by the girl. Now, in the sentences, Riley grows flowers in her garden. Riley is flowers in her garden. You cannot replace the main verb with the verb to be. Therefore, in this sentence, grows is not a linking verb. Some verbs like become and seem are always linking verbs. Some verbs can be used as both action or linking verbs. For example, feel, stay, look, taste, sound, smell, grow, appear. Now let's move on to our final category of verbs, auxiliary verbs. These are also called helping verbs. Helping verbs are used before action or linking verbs to give extra information regarding the tense or voice of the main verb. For example, the dog is walking. Walking is the main verb, and is the auxiliary verb to be. It indicates that the dog is walking now. It's in the present. The dog was walking. In this sentence, the auxiliary to be is in the past tense. Therefore, the dog was walking in the past. Modals or modal auxiliary verbs are a type of verb used to indicate necessity, ability, and intention. Some modal auxiliary verbs are can, could, may, might, must, ought to, shall, should, will, would. Laura might learn how to drive. This sentence means that Laura needs to learn, but it's not an obligation or necessity. Laura must learn how to drive. In this sentence, it is an obligation and necessity. There is no other way. Laura must. She has to learn how to drive. Now, as you can see, by just changing the modal auxiliary verb, you can completely change the meaning of a sentence. So it's important to use them correctly. Let's move on and look at some of the common uses of modal auxiliary verbs. We use the modals may, might, and could to say something is possible but not certain. For example, it may rain later. We don't know if it will. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. We use the modals can and could to make general statements about what is possible. We use can to indicate what is possible now in the present, and could to indicate what was possible in the past. For example, I can speak English. It's possible now. I could speak Spanish when I was young. This sentence means that it was possible for me to speak Spanish before, but I probably cannot do so now. Notice the differences between these sentences. That dog can be dangerous. That dog might be dangerous. That dog could be dangerous. The first sentence means that sometimes the dog is dangerous. It's a fact. The speaker knows. It can be. The second sentence with the modal might indicates that the speaker thinks it could be dangerous. It is not a fact. In the third sentence, the modal could indicates that the dog was dangerous sometimes in the past, but not anymore. This is also a fact. Now we use the modal auxiliary verbs can, could, and may to ask for permission. Could is more formal and polite than can. May is also used for permission and is even more polite and formal than could. Can I ask you a question? Informal. Could I ask you a question? Formal. May I ask you a question? Very formal. Now the modals should and shouldn't are used to make suggestions and give advice. Shouldn't is the contraction of should not. You should talk to the teacher. You shouldn't walk home alone at night. We use the modals must, need to, and have to indicate an obligation. You must not steal. You need to come to class on time. Notice the difference between these two sentences. You should do your homework. You have to do your homework. In the first sentence, the modal should is used to give advice or a recommendation. It's a good thing to do your homework, but you choose. You do it, you don't do it, no problem. In the second sentence, the modal have to indicates that the homework is an obligation. Finally, the modals will and shall are used to make predictions and state facts about the future. I will go shopping tomorrow. This is a firm plan for the future. Now notice the difference between these sentences. I will visit my sister tomorrow. I might visit my sister tomorrow. I can visit my sister tomorrow. I should visit my sister tomorrow. The first sentence, I will visit, indicates that this is a sure decision. It will happen in the future, for sure. The second sentence, I might visit, indicates that the speaker is thinking about it. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. I'm not sure yet. The third sentence, I can visit means that it is a possibility, but does not indicate any intention of doing it. It is not a future plan. The final sentence, I should visit, indicates that it is recommended. It would be a good thing for the speaker to visit their sister, but it does not indicate a future plan or obligation. Now, tenses are parts of verbs that tell you the time when the action referred to in the sentence took place. The infinitive or base form of a verb is a verb without a tense. That is how verbs are listed in a dictionary. The base form of any verb can then be changed into a singular or plural or into any tense. In Chapter 2 of this course, coming up in our next lesson, we will be looking at different tenses in the English language. Now it's time to move on with our lesson on the present simple tense. We use the present simple tense to talk about an action we do regularly. I walk to school every morning. I eat cereal for breakfast. With the present simple tense, when talking about routines or habits, we often use adverbs of frequency. For example, I walk to school every morning. We can also use the present simple to talk about something that is true now. He lives in Paris. This sentence indicates that the subject he has been living in Paris and is in Paris now. We use the present simple tense to talk about something that is always true. The sun is very hot. We can also use the present simple to summarize or describe a book, film, or play. For example, Harry Potter goes to a school for wizards. He makes many friends and fights a bad wizard called Voldemort. In this sentence, we have 3 action verbs in the present tense: goes, makes, and fights. Finally, we can use the present simple tense to refer to future actions. My train leaves at 10 a.m. tomorrow. My classes start next week. To form the present simple tense, we keep the base form or the infinitive, except with third-person pronouns, which are he, she, and it, for which we add an S at the end of regular verbs. For example, I talk, you talk, he talks, she talks, it talks, we talk, you talk, they talk. I see, you see, he, she, it, sees. We see, you see, they see. I like, you like, he, she, it likes. We like, you like, they like. For example, I speak to my mom every Sunday. I is a first-person pronoun singular. Therefore, we keep the base or infinitive form of the verb speak. He loves his dog. He is a third-person singular pronoun. Therefore, we add an S to the verb love. Some verbs are irregular. So, if they end in O, CH, SH, TH, or SS, we add ES to the end of the infinitive form of the verb, for third-person pronoun singular still. For example, I go, you go, he goes, she goes, it goes. We go, you go, they go. So notice for he, she, and it, we spell goes G-O-E-S. We spell pushes P-U-S-H-E-S. And we spell reaches R-E-A-C-H-E-S. For example, she misses her dad. The verb to miss ends with two S's. Therefore, we add ES with the third person singular. She always shushes me when we watch a movie. I talk too much. She is a third person singular pronoun, and shush ends with SH. Therefore, we conjugate the verb to shushes. The present simple can also be used to express a feeling that is happening right now, and most often we use the verb to be. I am sad. She is so excited for the summer holidays. The verb be is irregular, and this is how we conjugate it. I am, you are, he is, she is, it is, we are, you are, they are. When learning about tenses in English, it's important to mention contractions. We will discuss contractions further in Chapter 3 of this course, but they do require a big introduction in our lessons on tenses as well. When using the verb to be, we can contract with pronouns in the following way. I am, I'm. You are, you're. He is, he's. She is, she's. It is, it's. We are, we're. you are, your, they are, their. For example, she is angry becomes she's angry. It's important to note that both these sentences are acceptable and grammatically correct. In spoken and informal language, native English speakers almost always use contractions. Therefore, we would say, she's angry, not she is angry. We do not use contractions in formal writing. For example, business emails or academic essays. Another example, my mom is in jail. My mom's in jail. As you can see, with the verb to be, we can contract it with a pronoun, but also a proper noun or singular noun. My mom's in jail. Mom's, M-O-M, apostrophe S, is the contraction of mom is. As you can see, we replace the I with an apostrophe. Now we can move on to learning about how to form negative sentences in the present simple. To form the negative with action verbs, we use the word not with the auxiliary verb do. Subject plus do plus not plus the infinitive verb. Or with third person singular pronouns, he, she, it, we use the construction subject plus does plus not plus infinitive. For example, I do not have a car. He does not believe in ghosts. The first sentence is an affirmative sentence, or also a positive sentence. I have a car. In the negative version of the sentence, I do not have a car. There are a few important things to note from these examples. The first one is, notice how in the affirmative form, we do not use any auxiliary verbs. We only use the auxiliary verb do in a negative sentence. The general rule is we use auxiliary verbs for negative sentences and questions. For example, we love chicken. We do not love chicken. Do we love chicken? The auxiliary verb do is only used in 2 out of 3 of these situations. There is a rare exception. We only use the auxiliary verb do in an affirmative sentence in the present simple tense for extra emphasis. Usually, when someone doesn't believe you about something. For example, I do love chicken. I do. Do is used for emphasis. When a form becomes negative, we can contract it by combining the word not with the auxiliary verb and placing an apostrophe as replacement for the O in not. For example, I do not, I don't. You do not, you don't. He, she, it does not. He, she, it doesn't. We do not, we don't. You do not, you don't. They do not, they don't. Contractions are very important, as we previously mentioned, as they are commonly used in both spoken and informal written English. So it's important to practice using them as much as possible. So, when forming negative sentences with contracted auxiliary verbs, we can use the constructions subject plus don't plus infinitive, and subject plus doesn't plus infinitive. I don't know what to do. She doesn't drive to work. Now, how to make negative sentences in the present simple with the verb to be. We use the structure subject plus be plus not. For example, I am not happy. She is not swimming. Similarly to when making negative sentences with the contracted forms don't and doesn't, we can use contractions with the verb to be in the negative form. For example, I am not happy becomes I'm not happy. She is not swimming becomes she's not swimming. There are two different ways to contract the verb to be: with the subject or with the word not. Let's have a look at this chart. With the first person pronoun I, there is only one negative contraction: I'm not. For the second person singular pronoun, there are two ways to contract the negative form of you are. You're not, you aren't. With he, she, it, we can contract the negative form as follows: he's not, he isn't. She's not, she isn't. It's not, it isn't. With the first, second, and third person plural pronouns, we can contract as follows: we're not, we aren't. You're not, you aren't. They're not, they aren't. Both ways to contract are correct. There is no difference between the two except its form. It's important to be able to recognize both to improve your reading and listening comprehension skills, but you are free to choose whichever contracted form feels most natural and easy to you. Let's look at some examples. She is not tired can become she's not tired, or she isn't tired. We can either contract the verb be with the pronoun she, she's not, or we can contract the verb to be with the adverb not, she isn't. Now that we know how to form negative sentences using the auxiliaries don't, doesn't, but also the negative contracted forms of the verb to be, let's move on to forming questions. To form questions, we also use the auxiliary verb do, but at the beginning of a sentence. We switch the subject with the auxiliary verb. For example, do you want some chewing gum? Does your sister brush her teeth every day? We can also form questions with the question words what, where, when, in which case we follow this word with the auxiliary verb do or does, then the subject, then the infinitive verb. For example, when does your party start? Where do you study? For questions that already have an auxiliary verb, we switch the order of the verb and the subject to follow the structure auxiliary verb plus subject plus infinitive. For example, she can help is an affirmative sentence. When making it into a question, it becomes, can she help? We should go home becomes, should we go home? We must give it back. Must we give it back? Now, we have one last part of the lesson to look at. Interestingly, there are two different ways to talk about possession or ownership. We can say, I have a pen, or I have got a pen, which is generally contracted to I've got a pen. In American English, to indicate possession, we do not use the word got. We use I have, you have, he, she, it has, we have, you have, they have. I don't have, you don't have. He, she, it doesn't have. We don't have, you don't have, they don't have. Do I have? Do you have? Does she have? Do we have? Do you have? Do they have? For example, I have 3 cats. I don't have 3 cats. Do you have 3 cats? Contrastingly, more often in the UK or in British English, to indicate possession, we add the word got. I have got. I haven't got. Have you got? With the pronouns he, she, it, has got, hasn't got, has she got? For example, I have got 3 cats. I haven't got 3 cats. Notice how haven't is the contraction of have not. And finally, have you got 3 cats? Both these ways to indicate possession are grammatically correct and acceptable when speaking English. It's important to practice both in order for you to recognize them when you read them or hear them. While the present simple is an action we do regularly, the present continuous is something we are doing now. For example, I'm teaching English. Notice how I use the contraction of I and am to form I'm. She's walking to work. We're working on our project. We can use the present continuous for a few other things. For example, to talk about future plans or arrangements. For example, I'm traveling to Rome next week. Are you buying new shoes tomorrow? We also use the present continuous to mention something that is changing, growing, or developing. The climate is getting worse so quickly. Those children are growing up so fast. We also use the present continuous to talk about something that happens again and again. It's always raining in Bristol. She's so cute. She's always laughing. Notice how in these 2 examples we use adverbs of frequency that are placed between the auxiliary verb and the main verb. Now, to form the present continuous, we use the present participle. The present participle is regular verbs in their infinitive form and then adding ing. For example, grow is the infinitive. Growing is the present participle. Talk, talking. Shout, shouting. We form sentences in the present continuous tense by following the structure subject plus the auxiliary verb be plus the present participle. For example, she's exercising at the gym. She's is the contraction of the subject she and the auxiliary verb to be. I'm calling the phone company. Now remember, there are ways to contract the verb to be with every pronoun. For example, I am becomes I'm. Therefore, to use the verb drink in the present continuous, you can say, I am drinking or I'm drinking. You're drinking. He's drinking. She's drinking. It's drinking. We're drinking. You're drinking. They're drinking. Notice in these verbs how the end of the verb stays the same. Walking, 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 walking. There is no change in the third person singular pronoun. The present participle remains the same for all pronouns. Great work! Now let's move on to negative sentences in the present continuous tense. To form negative structures, we use the construction subject plus the auxiliary verb be plus not plus the present participle. And we can also contract the subject with be or contract be with not. For example, I'm not eating ice cream. It's too cold. They're not going out tomorrow. Let's review the negative contractions of the verb to be. As we saw in our previous lesson, there are two ways to contract the verb to be, except for the pronoun I, which remains I'm not. The negative contractions possible are you're not, you aren't. He's not, he isn't. She's not, she isn't. It's not, it isn't. We're not, we aren't. You're not, you aren't. They're not, they aren't. Now, question time. To form questions in the present continuous tense, we follow the structure auxiliary verb be plus subject plus present participle. This means that we place the auxiliary verb before the subject, which is very important to remember. For example, she is running for president becomes is she running for president? We can use question words in the present continuous, and to do so, we follow the construction question word plus auxiliary verb to be plus subject plus present participle. For example, what are you doing later? When are we eating dinner? Well done! Practice time again. Can you correct the sentence? By this I mean find the error and make the sentence correct. Are she going to the movies tonight? The correct question is she going to the movies tonight? With the pronoun she, the verb to be becomes is. Where we are going on our school trip. The correct question is, where are we going on our school trip? Even with a question word like where at the beginning of a question, the auxiliary verb be must be before the subject. Are we walk to school tomorrow? The correct question is, are we walking to school tomorrow? Walk is the infinitive form, but to ask questions in the present continuous, we need to use the present participle. Therefore, walking. I am meeting you after class later. The correct question is, am I meeting you after class later? The auxiliary verb be must be before the subject. What I drinking? The correct question is, what am I drinking? It's important to note that we do not use the present continuous with stative verbs. Stative verbs are verbs of thinking and feeling. For example, dislike, love, hate, remember, prefer, know. Verbs of senses: appear, feel, smell, sound. Or of opinion: agree, belong, disagree, or need. Well done! Now we can move on with our lesson on the past simple tense. The past simple is used in 3 ways. To talk about an action that happened once in the past. I was at the cinema this evening. I saw him at the supermarket. We also use the past simple to talk about an action in the past that was finished or completed at an unspecified time. I lived in London for 5 years. This sentence means that I do not live in London now, but the sentence does not indicate when I stopped or when I finished living in London. I listened to that song a lot last winter. Finally, we use the past simple to talk about an action that happened regularly in the past. For example, I walked to work every day last year. We can also use the past simple with the phrases I wish or if only to express things that we want now in the present but are usually not possible. For example, I wish I lived in a warmer country. If only he stopped drinking so much. With the phrase I wish, we can use both past forms of the verb to be, was and were. For example, I wish I were taller. I wish I was taller. Both sentences are correct. Another example: Patrick wishes he were smarter. Patrick wishes he was smarter. Once again, both sentences are correct. Now, we form the past simple tense of regular verbs by adding ed to the end of the infinitive or base form of a verb. For example, talk. I talked. You talked. He, she, it talked. We talked. You talked. They talked. Notice how talked is not pronounced talked. Regular verbs in the past simple tense are pronounced with a t or a d sound at the end. Talked, liked, walked. Also notice that unlike the present simple, the ending of regular verbs in the past simple tense remain the same for all pronouns. For example, I talked to my sister yesterday. I liked your dress at the party last night. I called you this morning, but you didn't pick up. Now, there is a very long list of irregular verbs that are formed differently in the past simple, and we will look into these a little later in the lesson. Now, to form negative sentences in the past simple, we use the auxiliary verb did, which is the past tense of do. We follow the construction subject plus did not plus infinitive. For example, they did not go on holiday last summer. We can also contract did and not to form didn't. I didn't see you at the party. I didn't like chocolate when I was a child. To form questions in the past simple, we use the auxiliary verb did plus the subject plus an infinitive verb. For example, did she play basketball as a child? Did you move to this neighborhood recently? We can also ask questions in the past simple using question words. We place them before the auxiliary verb did, which is before the subject of the sentence. For example, when did you go to the gym? Where did you eat dinner last night? Great work! We're finished with this practice. Now let's take the time to dive deeper into irregular verbs. These are often difficult for English learners because there are no particular set rules on how to recognize them, but they simply need to be learned by heart. For example, make, made. I made pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving. The good news is that past simple verbs are the same for all pronouns, except with the verb to be. We conjugate to be in the past tense as follows. I was, you were, he, she, it was, we were, you were, they were. For example, I was angry. They were upset. Now let's take a look at some common irregular verbs used in the past tense. Drink, drank. I drank too much wine last night. Eat, ate. I ate a lot of candy when I was young. Drive, drove. I drove to California last Christmas. Begin, began. I began learning French last fall. Break, broke. I broke my arm while skiing. Read, read. I read this book twice last summer. You may notice that read and read have the same spelling. The way to know how to pronounce it will be based on the context of the sentence. In this example, we have the words last summer. Therefore, we know the sentence describes an action in the past. Therefore, we must read, I read this book twice last summer. Have, had. I had no toys as a child. Feel, felt. I felt great joy after my niece was born. Forget, forgot. I forgot to turn off all the lights. Get, got. I got to the bus stop right on time. Hear, heard. I heard you're moving to Tanzania. Give, gave. He gave her all his love, but she still left. Keep, kept. I kept losing my keys, so I bought a key ring. Pay, paid. He paid the bills on time. Leave, left. She left the door open for you. Run, ran. My brother ran a marathon last year. Speak, spoke. I spoke good French when I was in school. Write, wrote. He wrote her a love song. Okay, enough examples for now. The list of irregular verbs is long. The best way to learn is by engaging your mind actively in the lesson, which means practice. Well done! We've finished this practice. Now time to move on to the past continuous. There are many common uses for this verb tense. We use the past continuous to talk about an action that was happening in the past until another action started. For example, they were eating outside when it started to rain. I was doing my homework when my mom called me downstairs for dinner. We also use the past continuous tense for an action that happened before or after a specific time. At 9 a.m., I was running in the park. This sentence indicates that I started running before 9 a.m. and was still running at 9 a.m. and is likely still running after 9 a.m. It's an ongoing action. Let's compare these two sentences. I was doing my homework at 8 p.m. I did my homework at 8 p.m. The first sentence is in the past continuous, was doing, and indicates that I started doing my homework before 8 p.m. and was still doing homework at 8. The second sentence, in the past simple, indicates that I started my homework at 8 p.m., not before. We also use the past continuous to show that an action lasted for a long time in the past. For example, my stomach was hurting yesterday. Everyone was shouting at dinner. We often use the past continuous at the beginning of a story. For example, last Saturday, I was waiting in line at the bank when the man in front of me just started shouting for no reason. We also use the past continuous to indicate a change of mind. For example, I was going to eat pasta for dinner, but my stomach wasn't well, so I had soup instead. Just like with the past simple tense, we can use the past continuous with the words wish or if only to express things that we want now in the present. She wishes we were traveling in first class. If only I wasn't running late to work. Equally, just like with the present continuous, we do not use the past continuous with stative verbs, which are verbs of thinking and feeling, of senses, or of opinion. We never use these verbs with continuous tenses, whether that may be the past, the present, or the future. For example, we do not say, when I arrived at the restaurant, I was needing to use the bathroom. Using the past continuous with the verb need is incorrect. Instead, we must say, when I arrived at the restaurant, I needed to use the bathroom. To form the past continuous, we use the past tense of the verb to be, which we use as an auxiliary verb, and we add it with the present participle, which means verbs ending in ing. For example, I was calling her phone when she showed up. A quick reminder on how to conjugate the verb to be. I was, you were, he was, she was, it was, we were, you were, they were. We were playing a game when the lights went out. Great work! Now let's move on to negative sentences. To form negative sentences, we can use the structure subject plus was or were plus not plus the present participle. For example, we were not sleeping at 10 p.m. We can also contract the auxiliary verb be with the word not. Was not becomes wasn't, and were not becomes weren't. For example, we weren't sleeping at 10 p.m. I wasn't eating yet. Just a reminder that in spoken and informal English, native speakers almost always use contractions, and it's important for you to practice them too. Only in formal or academic writing should you not use contractions. Now, to ask questions with the past continuous, we place the auxiliary verb to be before the subject and follow the construction was or were plus subject plus present participle. The affirmative sentence, she was visiting Paris this time last year, becomes as a question, was she visiting Paris this time last year? Another example, I was running late. Were you running late? Remember to conjugate the verb to be according to its subject. Now, before we properly begin to explore the forms and uses of the simple future, it's interesting to note that there are many different ways to speak of future actions, including with some tenses we have previously studied together in this chapter. For example, we can use the present simple to indicate an action that is scheduled in the future. For example, the train arrives at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday. The holidays start next week. Here are some words that are commonly used with the present tense when talking about future actions. Would like, plan, mean, want, hope, expect. We use these words in the present simple plus the infinitive. We plan to stay home for Thanksgiving this year. Plan is in the present simple, and stay is in the infinitive. Joel wants to go skiing this winter. Now, we can also use the present continuous to indicate future plans and arrangements. I'm playing basketball this weekend. They're coming to the party on Friday. We can also use the auxiliary modal verbs may, might, and could when we are not sure about the future. For example, I might go to the concert or I might just stay home. We could eat steak for dinner. It depends on the mood of the chef. Both these examples express uncertainties about future plans. We can also use the auxiliary modal verb should if we think that an action in the future is likely to happen, if it is probable. For example, we should be back before dark. The show should be done before 7 p.m. This means that we expect this event or action to happen. Wonderful. We can move on to the future simple tense. We use the simple future to talk about an action or condition that will start and end in the future and that hasn't happened yet. For example, I'm going to visit my grandma more often next year. It will be hard. As you may notice, there are two common ways of talking about the future, with the modal auxiliary verb will or the construction going to. Both will and going to are usually interchangeable, which means we can use either one in a sentence, and are both therefore correct. But there are some situations where you're more likely to use one or the other. We will first look at the uses and forms of the simple future with will, then going to. We form the future tense with the modal auxiliary will by using the construction subject plus will plus the infinitive verb. I will walk to work tomorrow. She will go to the supermarket later. Notice how go is in the infinitive form. We do not change it to goes. There is no subject-verb agreement with the pronoun she. Remember to use contractions in spoken and informal English. We can contract the subject with the auxiliary verb will to become I'll, you'll, he'll, she'll, it'll, we'll, you'll, they'll. I'll be waiting for you at the office. We use the auxiliary verb will to express beliefs or predictions about the future. It will be a rainy day tomorrow. Spain will win the World Cup this year. We use will to express a want or desire in the future. I hope you'll come to the party this weekend. We use will to make offers and promises. I'll see you later. I'll send it to you by email. And finally, we use will to mention an instant decision, meaning a decision made now. Sure, I'll come with you then. Let's look at our other way of forming the simple future tense, this time with the construction going to. To use going to, we follow the structure subject plus the verb be plus going to plus infinitive. We use the auxiliary verb be in the present tense. I'm going to write a novel this year. I'm going to start learning French next week. I'm is the contraction of the subject and the verb to be. We use the construction going to indicate plans and firm intentions in the future. I'm going to have dinner in an Italian restaurant tonight. I made reservations. And we also use going to for events that are very probable based on what we can see. The sky is so dark, I think it's going to rain. To form negative sentences in the future tense with the auxiliary will, we use the construction subject plus will not plus infinitive. We can also contract will not to won't. They will not buy Christmas gifts this year. They won't buy Christmas gifts this year. Both sentences are correct, but we are more likely to use the contraction in the second example in spoken English. To form negative sentences in the future tense with the construction going to, we follow the pattern subject plus be in the present tense plus not plus going to plus infinitive. I'm not going to cry this time. She isn't going to finish her dinner. If you remember our lesson on the present continuous, you will know that there are multiple ways to contract the subject with the auxiliary verb to be. For example, they are not going to travel over the summer. They aren't going to travel over the summer. Let's quickly remind ourselves of how to contract the verb to be in the present tense. I am, I'm not. You are, you're not. You aren't. He is, she is, it is. He's not, she's not, it's not. He isn't, she isn't, it isn't. We are, we're not, we aren't. You are, you're not, you aren't. They are, they're not, they aren't. Now, to ask questions with the auxiliary verb will, we follow the construction will plus subject plus infinitive. Will she eat more salad? Will they be okay? And to ask questions with going to, we follow the construction be in the present tense plus subject plus going to plus infinitive. Is she going to eat more salad? Is she going to be okay? Now we can move on to the future continuous tense. We use the future continuous to refer to an action that will be in progress at a specific time in the future. For example, this time tomorrow, we'll be boarding a plane to Hawaii. Next Sunday, we'll be dancing at the festival. We use the future continuous tense for an action happening before and after a specific time in the future. I'll be studying at 5 p.m. This sentence means that I will have started studying before 5, will still be studying at 5, and will probably be studying after 5. Another example, she'll be waiting for you when you arrive at the airport. To speak in the future continuous tense, we use the following construction: subject plus will be plus present participle. I'll be swimming in the Caribbean this time next week. To form negative sentences in the past continuous, we use the structure subject plus will not plus be plus present participle. We can also use contractions and create the structure subject plus won't plus be plus present participle. I will not be singing at the next concert. She won't be looking for a house anymore by then. To ask questions in the future continuous tense, we follow the pattern will plus subject plus be plus the present participle. Will you be working around 4 p.m. tomorrow? Will they be driving to the hotel? I just want to indicate that we don't use the future continuous very often because we more commonly use the present continuous to speak of such future actions. For example, compare these two sentences. I'll be watching Mike run tomorrow. I'm watching Mike run tomorrow. Both sentences are grammatically correct and can be used. It is just more likely that the second sentence will be used by a native speaker. Today, we'll be starting our journey into the perfect tenses with a lesson on the present perfect. So let's jump straight right in. There are different uses for the present perfect. We use it to indicate something that started in the past and is still happening or true in the present. For example, I have been married for 15 years. This sentence means that I got married 15 years ago and I am still married now. Compare the sentence to the following. I was married 15 years ago. The second example is in the past simple tense and indicates that I was married in the past, but I am not married anymore. We also use the present perfect to talk about an experience that happened at a non-specific time in the past, or an experience that is still valid today. For example, I've heard that song before. You can never unhear a song, therefore your experience of knowing the song is still valid now. Equally, it isn't specified when I heard the song. It's sometime in the non-specific past. Great. Now that we know the functions of the present perfect, let's learn more about its form. To use the present perfect, we must use the present participle. In our lesson on the past simple, we learned that to form the past simple tense of regular verbs, we add ed to the end of the infinitive form. This is also true to form the past participle. We simply add ed. I talked, past simple. I talked, past participle. You may notice the form remains the same for all pronouns. Here is another regular verb, to want. I wanted, I wanted. You wanted, you wanted, etc. For example, I have wanted a doll since I was a child. I have never liked tomatoes. Want and like are both regular verbs. Therefore, we add ed to form the past participle. We also learned in our lesson on the past simple that there is a very long list of irregular verbs that form differently in the past simple tense. This is also the case when forming the past participle. Look at this example. The verb to eat, which is irregular. I eat, present simple. You ate, past simple. You eat, you ate. He eats, he ate. She eats, she ate, etc. All verbs that are irregular in the past simple are also irregular in the past participle. I eat, present simple. I ate, past simple. I have eaten, past participle. Notice how the past participle form of a verb remains the same for all pronouns, just like the past simple. For example, I eat vegetables every day. Eat is in the present simple tense. I ate vegetables yesterday. Ate is in the past simple tense. I've eaten vegetables my whole life. Great work! Let's look at some examples of irregular verbs. Some verbs keep their infinitive form in the present, past, simple, and past participle. Cut, cut, cut. Hurt, hurt, hurt. Hit, hit, hit. Put, put, put. Set, set, set. Read, read, read. Notice how many verbs ending in a vowel and the consonant T remain the same for all tenses. Also pay attention to the pronunciation of the verb read. Although it is spelt the same in all three conjugations, the pronunciation is different. Read, present simple. Read, past simple. Read, past participle. For example, I cut my finger while chopping onions. This is the past simple. I have cut my finger twice this morning. I read that book last summer. She has read that book so many times. Now, some verbs have the same past simple and past participle. Bring, brought, brought. Have, had, had. Make, made, made. Tell, told, told. Hear, heard, heard. Catch, caught, caught. For example, I brought wine for dinner. They have brought too many snacks for tonight. Notice the difference in meanings in these two sentences. In the first sentence, which is in the past simple tense, this is a punctual action in the past. It happened once at a specific time. The second sentence in the present perfect has an impact on the present. It is an action in the past that will affect the present or future. Finally, we have many irregular verbs that are different in all three conjugations of the present simple, past simple, and past participle. Be, was, be. Do, did, done. Drink, drank, drunk. Know, knew, known. See, saw, seen. Write, wrote, written. For example, I saw the new Spider-Man movie at the cinema yesterday. This is a specific, one-time action at a specific point in the past. Therefore, we use the past simple. I have seen the new Spider-Man movie. This action happens at an unspecified time in the past. Therefore, we use the present perfect. I was happy yesterday. I've been so happy today. The first sentence in the past simple indicates that the speaker was happy at a specific point in the past. It does not indicate whether the speaker is still happy now. Whereas the second example in the present perfect indicates that the speaker has been happy in the past up to now and is probably still happy. Now, it's interesting to note an American versus British difference in an irregular verb. The verb get can be used as the past participle as got or gotten. Gotten is more used in the USA, in American English, whereas got as a past participle is more common in England and maybe some other English-speaking countries. For example, I've got 3 new books this year. I've gotten 3 new books this year. Both sentences are grammatically correct and are acceptably used in formal and informal language. Now, how do we form the present perfect? Well, we follow the sentence construction subject plus have or has plus the past participle. For example, I've heard that song before. The auxiliary have conjugates as follows: I have, you have, he, she, it has, we have, you have, they have. Remember to use the correct auxiliary verb when speaking in the present perfect tense. For example, they have been excited for the concert all week. She has been waiting for this moment her entire life. As always, it is common to use contractions with the subject and present tense of have. We use contractions in the following ways: I have, I've, you have, you've, he has, he's, she has, she's, it has, its, we have, we've, You have, you've. They have, they've. For example, you've been sad all morning. What's wrong? They've been driving for hours. Be careful. There are different contractions that can come from different auxiliaries or verbs. For example, she's happy is the contraction of she is happy. She's been happy all day is the contraction of she has been happy all day. You can tell the difference between the present simple and present perfect because the present perfect uses the past participle after the auxiliary. She's happy does not have a past participle, therefore it's the present simple. Now, to form negative sentences in the present perfect, we follow the structure subject plus have or has plus not plus the past participle. For example, I have not seen him today, or my cat has not gone outside to play. We can also contract have not and has not to form haven't and hasn't. I haven't seen him today. My cat hasn't gone outside to play. To ask questions in the present perfect, we follow the structure have or has plus subject plus past participle. Because remember, when asking questions in the present perfect, we place the auxiliary verb before the subject. For example, have you eaten today? Has she been to Italy before? We can also ask questions with question words. Therefore, we keep the same structure and add the question word at the beginning. Where have you been today? How has she got this money? Now, to ask negative questions, we can use the structure have or has plus subject plus not plus past participle. Have you not eaten today? Has she not been to Italy before? Generally, when a question is asked in the negative like that, it implies that the speaker, who is asking the question, already knows the answer. They are just confirming what they already know. Similar structures can be applied to all tenses. Now let's look at using adverbs with the present perfect. There are certain adverbs that are commonly used with this tense. We generally place the adverb between the auxiliary verb and the past participle, or at the end of the sentence or question. For example, with the structure subject plus have or has plus adverb plus past participle. You've never eaten cookies this good before. Or with the structure subject plus have or has plus past participle plus an adverb at the end of the sentence. She's been reading that book so quickly. Now let's look at some examples of adverbs commonly used with the present perfect. I want to be clear that these are not the only adverbs that can be used. They're just the most commonly used. And therefore, it's interesting to mention them. Ever. We often use ever to talk or ask about an experience up to the present. That was the best cake I've ever eaten. This sentence means that the cake was the best they've had in the past and is still the best the speaker has tasted up to today. Have you ever been to Belgium? Never. We use never instead of not in negative forms for emphasis. I've eaten snails, but I've never tried frog legs. I've eaten snails, but I haven't tried frog legs. Both sentences mean the same thing. They're just expressed differently. Make sure not to use never with the negative auxiliary have not, because then that would change the meaning of the sentence. Certain adverbs of time are also commonly used to indicate an action begun in the recent past, therefore not very long ago. Recently, just, yet, lately, today. Have you tried the local specialty yet? Note that we only use yet in questions and negative sentences, never affirmative sentences. Another example, I've recently started learning French. Finally, it is important to remember that you cannot use the present perfect for an action that happened at a specific point in the past. We use the past simple in that case. So for example, we do not say, I've spoken to her at 10 a.m. because this is a specific action at a specific time. Instead, we must say, I spoke to her at 10 a.m.